guys, we're back again for another episode of Empower Online then, and I am super excited to be talking to David Breed. We've already had a pretty good conversation even before I've hit record, so I'm sure this is going to be a really good conversation for you guys. Me and David have never actually met in person, but obviously I've been following him for quite a while. We're involved in some similar groups and things like that, so it's going to be a really good chat. David, thanks for coming on, my friend.
You're very welcome. Been looking forward to it.
Yeah, obviously, you're really well known in the martial arts. You've got a really good pedigree. I think we were just saying it's been like 45 years for you now in terms of martial arts. I'm sure a lot has changed in that time that we'll get into. But as with all of the kind of guests that I talk to, we always start at the start. And the first question is obviously going to be kind of when were you first introduced into the martial arts and how did it come about from, 45 years ago?
Yeah, my first introduction into martial arts was I was one of them kids that was as I was growing up I was very shy, very sort of reserved, and I kind of was, my mum was like, listen, it'd be a good idea for you to go and get involved in some of these martial arts groups and this, that, and the other. So my first thing was actually judo.
Okay.
I started going to a judo lesson just down the road from where we live, and the thing about it was, kind of unfortunately for me, that some of the lads who were giving me an hard time at school were also members of that academy and had been going quite a bit longer. So, but I stuck with that for a while, and I started, judo was very much a case of that to get your grade at that time, you had to compete.
Yeah.
You had to go to different tournaments and compete. And I stayed in judo for about 18 months, that's all. It wasn't a particularly long time. But then my stepdad and my mum had started going to a place in Ashton-under-Lyne, a place called Northern School of Fighting Arts, and that was run by a chap called Alan Horton. Now, Alan was very much, he was a Taekwondo practitioner, but very heavily influenced with Muay Thai. He was one of the guys who was involved way, way, way back in, I think, bringing Master Sken and that group over to the UK. So there was Alan teaching at the academy, and it was like a blend. Some nights he'd teach mostly Taekwondo stuff, other nights he'd teach Muay Thai. But there was a chap there also called, what was the blooming name? Russell Holden. Russell was British Thai boxing champion, heavyweight, so a big guy, and his nickname was the Animal. He was very full on, very aggressive, won a lot of his fights by knockout and things like that. So he was a very intimidating figure. And so they used to run classes side by side. So I was pretty much doing the Taekwondo because I liked that because of the athleticism in it.
Yeah.
I liked all the fancy kicks, if you like, all the spin kicks, jump kicks, etc., etc. I liked that because of that athleticism. But I liked the Thai boxing because of its real kind of raw and that solid approach.
Power and
yeah, that no nonsense approach.
Yeah.
So and Russell was very much like that. Even then, back in the day, the spars were. I mean, looking at it now, I would be kind of reluctant, but like back then, the sparring was very full on, especially the Thai boxing based stuff. So I was doing a blend across there. And then he used to have other chaps who were involved in the police, so they used to do a lot of like jiu-jitsu based stuff, like close quarter combat restraints and controls. So that academy, even way, way, way back then, was quite, a realistic blend of different sort of disciplines.
Yeah, quite progressive for that era, I don't know.
Yeah.
What year are we talking?
Oh,
Roughly?
we're talking about 19, it must be now, when I was at Northern School, was probably 1983, 1980, end of 1982, 1983. And I stayed there for quite a long time. I stayed training with Alan and that group for quite a while.
Yeah.
Alan invited me on a group trip to Thailand when I was 18.
Cool.
So, I was 17 at the time, and basically I saved up. I was on a little YTS scheme, and my mum said to me, right, you don't have to pay any board, you can put all your money towards one side, put it towards saving to go to Thailand, and actually went when I was 18. And whilst there, it's funny because the group I went with, I was kind of like, look, I really want to go and train in these. A lot of them wanted to go on vacation, just have a trip and this, that, and the other. But I was very much into training, so I sort of started asking around while I was there. I want to go to the best camp I can. Who would you advise? And it kept coming back. Go to Sityodtong. Go and train at Sityodtong. That's the place you want to go. And at the time you had like legendary fighters Sam Hart, Payakaru and a few others.
Yeah.
And Sam Hart was kind of like the Floyd Mayweather of Muay Thai. He was so ridiculously famous over there. It was it so. I'd sort of found the address, hired myself a little moped, which my mum would have absolutely killed me knowing that I'd done that.
Yeah.
And so I hired this little moped, asked people for directions, and off I went. And just found the camp myself. And so while I was over in Thailand on that trip, I went training at Sityodtong sort of twice a day as much as I could.
Sure.
And at that place there, then there was loads of, I didn't really know them to be truthful, but loads of K1 stars.
Okay.
So a lot of Dutch guys and whatnot. So I made a beeline for introducing myself, training with them, sparring with as many of them as I could. And it was a very humbling experience, that, to be truthful. I mean, I sparred with Sam Hart, I did a few rounds with him, and it was, and his brother, and again, like I said, a very humbling experience. You know, I was already a downgrade at that time, but it was just a different level, the level
Sure.
of, you know, so that had a big influence on me, that kind of really changed my approach. I thought, right, you know what, I enjoyed it that much that I thought, right, this is going to be a thing where I want to come back again, and I'll save up and I'll come on, you know, future trips to Thailand. And then what had happened was I'd been competing in the UK, doing a few different things, kickboxing fights, Thai boxing fights, a few sort of semi-contact, like continuous type bouts,
Yeah.
things like that. So I'd started already competing in different things, and I remember, I'm trying to think how it came about. I'd seen this thing going on that Bill Wallace was coming to the UK.
Yeah.
So I got in touch with Chris Bowie and asked him if I could come down. And Chris was like, yeah, absolutely, you know, I would love to have you there. So I put it out to a few people, and I went down to the seminar, met Chris and that lot, and at that particular seminar in Manchester, that one, I mean, it was a hotbed of like UK stars that were there. I mean, you know, Ronnie Green was there. There was like loads and loads of well-known sort of established fighters.
Yeah.
So obviously people got together, they trained together, they sparred and things like that. And that's how I got to kind of meet again some of the established names. And again, my thing was like just a sponge. I wanted to learn off these guys. Bill Wallace at that particular time was, you know, incredible kicker
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
whatnot. And again, them sort of at that particular time, they had a big influence on me and my training, and you know where I wanted to kind of go with it. And it just sort of spiraled from there. I was training all the time. I was coaching, assisting my stepdad. And then I remember I had a bad hip. I always had a bad right hip. My right hip used to be always inflamed and sore. My hips used to crack and pop. I used to have problems. This is not through the martial arts. This is going back from being young.
Okay.
You know, I had problems with my joints from being young. My hips used to kind of snap and pop, and I remember thinking, right, my right hip is so sore all the time, so I started pretty much just kicking with my left leg.
Right. Okay.
Hence that influence from Bill Wallace.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
kind of like watching, thinking, well, how can he do this when every time I kicked my right leg it was agony? So I used to just kind of constantly work on my left side. So that really kind of helped in a sense. So I started modelling that same sort of kicking type thing, using the chamber double kicks,
Yeah.
and that worked all right for me because of that background in Taekwondo.
Sure.
And so I thought, right, well, I don't want to continue. I know it sounds thingy, like competing in the full contact events, because your body gets beaten up a bit. You know what I mean? It does. Even if you win, you're getting bashed around.
It's impact, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought, well, what I did, I saw that there was this open tournament, the FSKs, and I saw that they did this light continuous event, which wasn't points based. The points based never suited me; it just wasn't my cup of tea. So I thought I'll give this, I'll enter into this light continuous event, and so I went down to the Manchester one at Urmston and entered this FSK, and the whole tempo of the fight was kind of so different than the full contact and the Thai boxing. It was a totally different kind of sport, if you like. So I actually placed okay. I think I actually on that very first one I had about 4 or 5 fights. The categories were massive back in them days, and I think I did place second. But the guy who actually beat me in the finals, it was a close fight between us, but he was very, very experienced in that. And I remember thinking to myself, if I want to compete in this, then it's something that I probably need to start training with the people who are established in that.
Yeah, sure.
So Peter Lewis, who was running that event at the time, I'd met Peter a few times before, and he knew me. And went over to speak to Peter, and I was having a good chat to him. And I'd said to him, I said, listen, Peter, can you recommend anyone that I go and train with? I want to, what's it? And he'd said to me, he said, well, go and train with Alfie if you can.
Mm-hmm.
Go and train with Alfie Lewis if you can. Get down to Alfie's place. And I thought, it's just a little bit too far for me. To get out. It wasn't the excuse. It was just that I didn't drive. I was thinking, right, I need to kind of think. And he said to me, go over to. He said, if you can't get down to Alfie's, go down and I'll introduce you to Bob and Tony Sykes.
Yep.
So I'll introduce you to Bob.
Yep.
So Bob was actually competing on the same day. So I remember watching Bob compete, and I went up to him afterwards, and I said, I'd love to come over and train with you. Would that be all right? And he was like, yeah, of course you can, you're very welcome. And then I don't know what happened. I didn't bother going initially.
Yeah.
And then I got the number a bit later on for the Karate Warehouse, it was called. And I thought, right, I'm going to go over and see if it's okay for me to go. So I rang them up, and it was Bob's brother, Tony, who answered. And I said to Tony, I said, I'd love to come over and train with you. Would that be all right? And Tony just went, yeah, of course you can. Bring a sleeping bag. You can come and you can stay in the gym.
Beautiful.
And I was like, really? And he went, absolutely. We'll give you some keys to the gym. You come over, you get a sleeping bag, and off you go. And I was like, okay, no problem at all. I'll do me. I said, yeah, what's it? And I said, what about, what do I owe you? He went, no, come over my guest.
Wow.
And I was like, really? No thingy. Like, he said, no, you come over as my guest. And so I ended up taking a sleeping bag with me, and went and stayed at the Karate Warehouse, and I was sleeping there at the gym, and I was just like, training with Bob and Tony a few times a day, and then training in the classes in the evening.
How long were you there for?
Oh, I was only there a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
But me and Tony just hit. I mean, I got on really well with Bob, but I was training more with Tony. I was training with Tony most days. We were going out hill sprinting. We were training pad sparring, and I'd trained with Bob a few times, but me and Tony were training all the time, and we just really hit it off. And we became really, really good friends, me and Tony. So much so that I always thought of him as times progressed over time, like my big brother.
Yeah.
It was that good a relationship. I'd drive over to Huddersfield as often as I could.
Sure.
I'd go and train with them, spar with them, and then Tony would come over and see me sometimes and come over and train, and that went on for quite a long time.
Good.
And it was through that Bob, I think it was at the time, had said to me, come and do some competitions with us, this, that, and the other. And so I thought, right, you know what, that's an honour really to be asked, because I'm not one of them people who would be a natural competitor. I'm not like someone who's a natural fighter. It's just purely because I suppose other people were putting the faith in me to sort of say, you're good enough to compete, so come and do it, get onto some of these events.
Yeah.
But it's not something that I would say I thoroughly enjoyed fighting or anything like that.
Yeah.
It was the camaraderie. It was about being around these people who I looked up to.
Yeah.
And and then I remember I invited, I think, how did it come about? I'd met him, Joe Cheney. I met Joe because Joe was going over training, and they were all part of the Warriors team.
Yeah.
And then what happened was I invited Joe down to my academy to do a seminar. And Joe at that time, I mean, Joe was super dynamic, explosive.
Sure.
And so I invited Joe down and said, will you come and do this seminar for me and whatnot. And on the day we sparred, and he literally beat me up, in a nice way, but in a way that like I was thinking, my God, you know what I mean?
This is next level.
He was just sweeping me, slamming me, everything, and I was like thinking, flipping heck, he's so explosive, this, that, and the other. But he said to me afterwards, he was like, Dave, I really think you can go places, you know what I mean? He said, with a bit of like adjustments here and there. He said, you know what I mean? I said, this, that, and the other. So
Quite a
that's
compliment.
how I kind of got involved with Shore Eye and this and that. I mean, kind of prior to that, what had happened was I met Dave Morris, Dave Morris was one of Joe's senior instructors at the time, who was running like a branch of the Shore Eye clubs. So it was then that I opened an academy, and Dave come along, started assisting coaching, and I became part of the elite martial arts group, which was under Shore Eye. But then over time, I was kind of less and less involved with elite, and I was kind of more or less doing my own thing, running my own academy.
Sure.
And it was then that I got the invite through Joe, Bob, and everybody else to go and fight for the Warriors.
Amazing. Yeah, yeah.
So I fought for the Warriors on a few occasions, and travelled with them.
What was that experience like? Because obviously the Warriors are kind of legendary in the circuit, aren't
Yeah,
they? And the pressure obviously
yeah.
must have been
Well,
huge. But
just to be invited to
oh,
just to be invited to fight for them
yeah,
was, a huge honour to me. Really, that was kind of like, wow, this young bullied kid who had been struggling, to go from being, I always kind of have that thing of from bullied to black belt, from
yeah,
black
sure,
belt to champion, that kind of thing. By having people who've got faith in you,
yeah,
that's the thing, isn't it? If you've not got it in yourself, you've got other people genuine people who I looked up to, and then going training with these people, becoming friends with these people
yeah.
over the years. A lot of the people I really admired are now close friends of mine, and we've had some great relationships and some great experiences over the years. I got close, invited Alfie Lewis down to my academy, done seminars, things like that.
Yeah.
And these people who were, in my opinion, they were legends. I used to watch them compete, and like I say, they were very inspiring.
Mm.
And now to hold them as friends means more than anything,
Yeah,
really.
yeah,
And I think the world of them all.
yeah.
Um, me and Joe are very, very close. Joe's been a mentor. He advised me and guided me on a lot of my fights when I was younger,
Sure.
helped get me ready and things like that. And he cornered me at some of the big fights that I had and things like that. And he was kind of a rock, and he always has been. He always, even to this day, we're still in contact a lot.
Brilliant.
And I look to him for guidance and whatnot.
Yeah.
Um, and again, like people like Tony and stuff like that, over the years, we've maintained great relationships, and that's one of the things that I would say I'm very, very grateful to the martial arts for, introducing me to a lot of really good people,
Yeah.
you know. And again, I always had that passion for searching out, going training with the people who I admired, people who I respected.
Was it
I
always like
remember,
that for you? Were you always like wanting that thirst for kind of searching
yeah, I
for else?
think,
'Cause some people kind of dabble, don't they? They dabble. They'll do a couple of classes a week. Maybe they'll do one class a week. Maybe it'll go up to two. Then they'll kind of fall out of love with it, and then maybe they come back when they're an adult or something. But for you, it seems
yeah,
like a very consistent thing throughout your life that you trained. You've gone off to Thailand when you were 17. That's quite a big step in itself, especially in those days when there's no internet. You can't just like
yeah,
Google
yeah,
someone's website, can you? And just be like, all right, I'll go there, whatever.
no,
It's quite a big
no,
deal.
that's right.
And then you've kind of, consistently sought out the best and the biggest names and then gone on and become, kind of equals to them, I suppose, in a way, and fighting with them in a team and things like that. So, yeah. When did it become like, was it always like that? This is what I'm going to do. This is, my path, I suppose.
I think the whole thing is like it's about being inspired, isn't it? If somebody inspires you, you know what I mean? What is it about them that inspires you? Their athleticism, their technique, their movement, their fighting ability, or even just how nice they are as a person, how good they are as a person, their
Yeah.
ability to work. Like I was one of them that if I went and trained with them, I give 150%. You know what I mean? It was like I'm there. I'm here to really learn from
Yeah,
you, and I
yeah.
look up to you. You know what I mean? I really genuinely admire what you do and who you are, and I want to be. You inspire me. So I think as a coach, um, that's the perfect student, isn't it? There's
Yeah,
someone
yeah,
who's
of
like,
course.
I am literally a sponge. I
Everything.
want to learn.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
want to
Give me it
listen.
all.
Give everything I can. I'm here and give everything I've got.
Sure.
So. you know, nowadays, as you say, people are kind of, they'll dip the toe in and off they go. But I wasn't like that. I was like, listen, like I said, with Tony and people like that, I used to travel over as much as I could, as much as I possibly could. And that led on to things like being invited to, I remember Buster Reeves, Buster, because I've met Buster a few
Yeah, yeah,
times. Well, quite a lot. We trained together. We were friends.
yeah,
You know, Buster trained at the Karate Warehouse with Bob and Tony, and Buster was a great
yeah,
athlete
yeah.
and a great person. You know, we again, me and Buster really hit it off.
Fantastic stuff, man.
Um,
Yeah,
and yeah, and then Buster came over to train with me. Many years ago at one of my academies, and he'd said to me at the end of the session, he went, "Oh," he said, "do you fancy having a bit of a roll around?" Just Buster was fighting for the kick jiu-jitsu team,
hmm,
Great Britain kick jiu-jitsu team, and he said and we had a bit of a spar. You know, we used to spar and train together, and he said let's have a bit of a grapple, let's have a roll around. And it was then that kind of judo experience kicked in, and even though I hadn't done it for a lot, I was kind of still I was still always training in that kind of thing, grappling with people and this
yeah,
and the other. And me and Buster had a real long grapple, and I was only probably 63 kilos, something like that. And Buster was a big, strong
yeah, yeah. He's a
cruiserweight.
big guy.
We'd grappled for quite a while, and I remember him saying to me, he said, "Dave, you know what?" He said, "You will really take to the kick jiu-jitsu. It'll be a really good format for you."
Yeah,
And then so he'd gone back and spoke to the coaches of the kick jiu-jitsu team and said, "Listen, get Dave over, let him come to one of the squad trainings." He said, "You know what I mean? I think you'll find Dave will be a good fit for this."
hmm,
So they sent me an invite to go to the squad training. So after that one squad training, I got invited then to become part of the team. So that's how that led on to fighting for the kick jiu-jitsu team.
sure.
And that format I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that the mixture between striking, grappling, throws, submissions, everything else. It was like a precursor to the UFC
I
type
was going to
things.
say, yeah. So, what kind of year are we talking about now? Because obviously, UFC was like
That was
394, something like that.
about 90, I think, when I fought in the World Championships 1998. So I think I've been going over for a couple of years, about 1996, something like that. So I'd started training with a kick jiu-jitsu team. I used to travel over to Dewsbury, go and train with them guys.
Yeah.
And again, just a great group of people, you know, very intense. They're all world-class competitors.
Oh,
Uh,
what was the rule
you
set
know,
for it? So, was it different
the
from
rule
both?
set, it was if I remember rightly, I think there were like 3-minute
Yeah.
rounds, and you, if you, for example, if you threw someone, you had 30 seconds to get a submission.
Okay.
If you didn't get a submission in 30 seconds, it would
Stop.
bang back to your feet, fight.
Nice. Okay.
So the thing about that format, in for me, about the fact that like being very realistic was, I remember him saying to you, as soon as you tie up, as soon as you get the clinch, as soon as you get the throw, you look immediately for your submission. You've got your
Killer
submission
instinct.
in
Yeah,
mind,
you're in.
you know, which for street defense is the perfect kind of thing,
Yeah.
because the last thing you want to be doing is rolling around on the floor,
Sure.
and you know what I mean, and then somebody else comes in and boots you, and you know, and you don't want to. I'm not saying grappling isn't effective, but it really is. But on that basis, that get your submission instantly.
Yeah, yeah.
If you don't get that submission and you're struggling to, just get back to your feet,
Yeah,
break, get
yeah.
back to your feet, and then coming from a striking background, you know, I was more of a striker than I was a grappler, if you like. I mean, it's a funny thing. I'll say this to most people. It's, as a striker, I loved the grappling. I found it very technical. I really enjoyed the
Yeah.
grappling. I did, but I've not met many grapplers who like striking.
Yeah. Sometimes it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know
You
what
know
you
what I
mean. Yeah.
mean? So my thing was like striking first, backed up with that grappling, and you know, I found that grappling with high-level grapplers, I could hold my own. Do you know what I mean? I was very good at escaping positions, getting back to my feet. I was very good at escaping submissions and getting back to my feet.
What do you
Fighting.
attribute that to? Do you think it's natural athleticism? Do you think it was that judo background that you had for kind of 18 months? Do you think it was just the fact that you trained? You know?
I tell you, it was a wake-up call actually, in the basis that on my very first squad training, when I went over to train with the kick jiu-jitsu team, um, the first part of it was all striking based, and all this initial sparring was striking based. And I felt, I know I'm not being thingy, but I felt I'm comfortable here.
Yeah,
I'm all
yeah.
right.
Well, it's what you know.
Everything's
Yeah,
fine.
that was
Yeah, I'm
bread and butter.
comfortable with this. This is fine. And then he kind of went, right, okay, freestyle sparring now, takedowns, grappling, submissions, everything.
He went,
And I just got blooming leathered.
oh,
I got slammed, submitted. I mean, they're all world class players. And I was finding myself thinking, flipping out. I remember on the drive home, I was like, what the heck with that? That was embarrassing. I thought, flipping heck, that is a kick up the butt there. You know what I mean? I was like, right, that's it. I'm going to, if nothing else, I'm going to work on getting out of these positions. It was kind of that thing of solid position submission.
yeah,
I thought, get out of the position, get back to my feet, work on scrambling, work on this anyway, avoid the takedowns, work on my feints and fakes. You know what I mean? With these guys, you don't just kick. If you just threw a kick, that was it. It was over for you. Yeah, boom, grab you down you went. So you had to become better at disguising your attacks, better at feinting and faking and setting them up in a different way. You couldn't just throw a punch. If you did, that was it. Again, it was, you know, you were slammed.
you're done. Yeah,
So I thought, you know what I mean? I thought, right, you've got to get better at feinting and faking and this, that, and the other, and learning how to set your shots up against these guys, you know. So that kind of helped that approach, you know. So that was a wake-up call, the combination between the two. And then as you can see over the years, you know, martial arts has kind of evolved in that sense of, if you look at the early days of the UFC in comparison to today, you know, you've got very, very good level, high level striking combined with high level grappling, and the fact that they're allowed to strike, you know, you know, I have some students who compete in different things. I have a few students who compete in different events. They'll compete in kickboxing, Thai boxing, K1, grappling only, mixed martial arts, and so on. And the whole grappling game changes the second you allow striking in there.
yeah.
And then again, the whole grappling game would change again if other things were allowed in there. Bites, eye gouges, groin strikes, things like that. That would change the whole dynamics of grappling again. You know, I mean, joking beside, sometimes what I used to do with my students was I say, right, you're all grappling, and I'd have them grappling, striking, grappling, and I would go around the gym putting plastic bottles on the floor.
Simulating weapons.
So while they're grappling, I'd just literally, if I would grab the plastic bottle and just whack, you know what I mean? And I'd be like, look, that's the danger of it. If you're not aware of the fact that there's something they can use, so you've got to be able to nullify that, you know, control the strikes, control the fact that they may grab for something or they may have a weapon, and always have that assumption that they've got one. So, you know, joking aside, and it's one of them things that people look at and go, it's not very realistic, but the fact that combination of having something that's a concern like a simple plastic bottle, you know, and if you're getting hit with it, then you better learn how to control that limb in case of. So for me, the martial arts has always been bluntly about self-preservation. You know, it started with that young bullied kid, lack of confidence, this, that, and the other, to wanting to be able to defend myself. And you'd go and, you know, you find that unfortunately there's a lot of places that are teaching they're teaching nothing but fluff. You know what I mean? That non-realistic approach. I was more like, this has to work. This has to be able to defend me, God forbid. You know, over the years, unfortunately, I found myself in pretty dangerous situations. You know, like I was only a youngster. I was only 15-year-old, and I was walking back to a train station. A scenario like this, and it's a scary situation. But I walked past this pub. This guy came out. He turned around. He went, "What are you laughing at?" And I was like, "What? Nothing, mate. Look," I said, "Come on, man, I'm a kid, what's up with you? I'm just on my way back to the train station." And he went, "You're not from round here, are you, mate?" I went, "Oh, come on, bud." I said, "I just want to get back on the train," you know what I mean? So he's walked over to me, bottle in his hand, and he kind of walked up to me, and I looked round like that, and his mates come out of the pub behind him, right? And he walked right up to me and just went, "What did you say?" I said, "Oh, come on." And he just went, bang, nutted me straight in the face. And I've kind of gone slam back against this garage doorway, and I obviously look up. I've got them surrounding me. There's him and 5 others surrounding me, and as he come in, I just went crack, bang, and I've smacked him straight on the chin, and he went out like a light, literally just bang,
on the
hit
button.
the floor. gone. And then they all just jumped me. They're all kicking me, hitting me and everything. And I remember shelling up, just covering up. I was getting kicked and booted and everything. And I managed to sort of stand up, grab this guy and hip through him. Bang. And he went straight down on his head. Bang. And he was gone. He was done. So the others literally spread back.
Yeah.
And I remember it clear as day. You never leave these things. And they broke back, and I went, right, come on then, let's go. And none of them would do anything. They were just like, what's it? And this one guy, he was just twitching on the floor, and the other one, he was just done. And one of them literally turned around to me and went, he's dead, you've killed him. And I was just like, oh my God. You know what I mean? That kind of cold kind of like thing of like, oh my God.
Cold
And I just fucking legged it. And even then, thinking to myself, oh my God, I've killed him. Do you know what I mean? And that concern, that real worry of like, Jesus, man, that is like, you know, flipping heck. And I'd had other things where, you know, a similar scenario, it's a different thing, but again, a guy had literally rang my mum's house up, this lad, well-known blooming local nutter. And he was like, you're Dave Breed, aren't you? And I was like, yeah, you alright, what's up? And he went, just letting you know you're dead when I see you. And phone went down. And I was like, oh my God. Again, I was only about 15, something like that. And lo and behold, cut a long story short, my mum, we didn't have a car. My mum had asked me to go up to my auntie's on a local estate. And I remember thinking, oh God, Bennett, I've got to walk up. And I know I'm going to be going up to this estate where this lad lives.
Right.
I just pray for God. So I said to my friend Stuart, I said, Stuart, you know, come with us, will you? You walk up with me. And lo and behold, we walk onto this estate and walk past this pub, and this lad's in the pub with his mates. And I was like, oh God,
Here we go.
So next minute, they come running out, surrounded me and my friend Stuart. And this lad said, right, you're freaking getting it. You know what I mean? I was like, oh no, come on, let's leave it. Took his top off, come running at me, and I just went bang, round kicked him straight in the head. And out he went, bang, gone. Like that, right? And then one of them's ran at my mate Stuart, and they're having a full-on scrap. But no one else, thankfully, everyone else was just like, Jesus, this guy's been banged, he's gone out. Their little local thug, and he's done.
Yeah.
And it was that same thing. I looked round, I looked at my friend Stuart, and I was gonna, and he went, no, leave us, leave me. And I was like, so he was having a fight with this lad, and he was like, don't get involved, let me deal with it. And it went on for a couple of minutes, and then this other lad just gave in. And again, I was kind of like, oh my God. And they ended up picking this lad up who I'd kicked in, basically round kicked, and like literally dragging him off.
Yeah.
He was completely out.
Done.
And me and my friend Stuart ran up to my auntie's, and we got there. My mum was like, oh my God, what's going on? She's going, I'm calling the police. And I'm like, no, don't call the police, I don't know what's happened to him. You know what I mean? And but them kind of things are, you know, you grow up with that kind of thinking, God, but the last thing I want to do is get involved in a fight. You know, people get seriously hurt, and you know, all this, you see it all the time. I get so many youngsters come to my club who've been threatened, bullied, attacked.
Yeah.
You know, and they don't realise the danger of. It only takes one punch to
Yeah, and the
seriously
repercussions from that. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, so I'm always sort of saying to my guys, you're never the protagonist, the antagonist of something like that. You're never the one who, you know, it's like that saying of be able to defend yourself. That's it. Everything I teach about the martial arts is self-preservation. Be able to look after yourself. That's it. Never start something. Never be the one who instigates something. Yeah. Be willing to defend yourself. Have the confidence to do so, of course. But don't be an antagonist. You know, be a nice person. That's it. Start with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Start with the end result of don't be a dick.
You know, train as hard as you can. Do it from all the positive aspects. Keep fit. Look after yourself. Hence that thing, like I said, self-preservation. So to me, it's about looking after myself physically, looking after myself nutritionally, looking after myself emotionally, spiritually, whatever, you know, just being able to take care of myself. And the training ticks the boxes for that. You know, all the mobility drills I teach, all the stretching, all the strength training, all the conditioning work. You know, I look at it from the perspective of keeping my brain sharp, cognitive function, you know, I do a lot of bilateral type
Nice.
training,
Yeah.
make sure we're stimulating both sides of your
Yeah.
brain, make sure you're coordinating and stuff like that. So I teach the martial arts with that same attitude of self-preservation. Look
Longevity
after
and
yourself, prepare
self-preservation.
yourself.
Yeah.
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 Um, be the best possible version of yourself by giving your best. If you are that capable of being such a good fighter per se, do it so that you protect people.
Yeah.
Do it so that if you're seeing somebody being bullied at school, you look after
Yeah.
them.
You
You know
stand
what I
up for
mean?
him, and yeah.
Yeah, stand up for people. If you're that blooming tougher guy, if you're that tough, you're that strong, etc. Be the person who looks after people. Then,
Absolutely.
you know. So that's what the whole thing for me is: aspirations to become your best self, look after yourself, train hard, inspire. When I say inspire people, I don't mean that you deliberately do that. I think you're. What was that I was saying? I say to everyone all the time: if you want to inspire people, do it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Do it yourself. Your actions then will inspire
Mm-hmm.
people. Because I never really did it with that thing of I want to inspire people, but if I've inspired people along the way, then great. You know what I mean? That's really where it's all sort of my academy runs on that ethos.
Well, you're known as a top level coach now, and you've taught some of the best names, and you've been involved with some of the best names. Was coaching a natural thing for you? Did you naturally fall into coaching in terms of your personality, or was it more like, all right, I'll coach if I have to, but actually I want to focus more on me, or
No, I think you know what it is, that genuine thing of wanting to help people,
mm,
wanting to help them and be the best coach I could be.
yeah,
That still is something that is my underlying thing of where I'm at. Is I always look at it and think I want to be the best coach I can be. You know,
and what does that mean
I
to you? Like, what qualities do you think that?
that like we said before about being a good leader,
Yeah,
being a respectful person. You know the way you hold yourself. I think in the position of being a martial arts instructor or teacher, lead by example.
mm-hmm,
You know what I mean? If you're running that scenario especially if you're involved in teaching kids or even adults, be the best version of a coach that you can be. It's no good going out there cursing, swearing, drinking, just being a complete, outside of your own academy.
yeah,
Be somebody that that you set a good example for people. Be humble, but be respectful.
yeah,
If you demand the best from yourself, your students can see that it's genuine. Um, you know, I'm very much I would say, because like I said before, I wouldn't say I was a natural fighter. Some people just enjoy the whole thing of
yeah, yeah.
that. They like fighting, they like competing. I was more along the lines of the technical side of
Okay,
things, looking at the most efficient ways to do things, what gives you the best results, studying it from that perspective, so very much I enjoy the very technical side of things.
mm,
Why does that work? How does it work? When it comes to things like grappling and escapes and reversals and all that kind of stuff, striking, what makes you the most efficient way of throwing a kick, a punch? What's the most effective way to defend your head? How do you defend? And so on. So, and it was that going training with a lot of these high level guys reinforced what I was doing. Do you know what I mean?
sure,
Like that's where I used to think to myself, well, that's the way I coach it, the way that, and that's the way I do it. And it just reinforced that I was giving the right information. You know what I mean? I think, let's face it, when you first start coaching, I don't mean this to sound like it's disrespectful in any way to people, but when you first start coaching, you're not very good at it. You've got to learn to coach. You've got
yeah,
to go through the whole mill of it. You find each person who trains on your mats is there for a different reason.
yeah,
Every one of them.
yeah,
Some of and them reasons change as time goes on. They
yeah, yeah,
might just want to do it for fun. They might want to do it for fitness. They might want to do it for self-defense. Some might want to become instructors,
yeah,
and that kind of goes along as you see. So Um, and I've seen that over the years. They start out, and then as time goes on, they reach a certain standard, then they want to start competing. Some of them,
Yeah.
some of them don't. They want to go into instruction and so on like that. So guiding them along that way. But you develop as a teacher through experience, don't you? You know what I mean? Of dealing with people and, people questioning why you do things in a certain way.
Yeah, yeah.
That you find that them students who go, well, what if someone does that? What if someone does this? What if
Yeah.
someone does that? And then, what if they reverse that? And you having that ability to follow that on,
Sure.
so that I think you become a better martial artist over time, especially from teaching.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
this is why a lot of my, they get purple belt, brown belt levels and stuff like that. I start getting them assisting, start getting them shadowing and coaching. And I said, what it'll do, as you're explaining the techniques to the beginner, it'll reaffirm to you how to do the techniques
Exactly.
correctly and
Yeah.
more efficiently. And you'll be looking for the mistakes they make.
Yeah.
I said this to some of them the other night. I said, when you start assisting coaching and you're watching people perform and you're holding pads to them or you're doing techniques with them, and you become very good at spotting mistakes,
Yeah.
and then you become very good at amending them mistakes. I said, but that then, if you compete, carries over, because you get good at spotting the mistakes your competitor or
Yeah.
your opponent make, crossing their feet, dropping their hands.
Yeah.
You spot the mistakes they make.
Yeah.
So that empowers you to kind of think, right, well, I can see him doing that, and your awareness goes up. So
Absolutely.
I think, that's why I move them towards instructors and stuff like that as they start progressing up.
Yeah.
And it's that sharing thing, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
good to
give it
give
back.
back.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it's
No.
obvious that you've said that you liked the technical aspect of the martial arts and getting to that. So, what do you think are some maybe fundamentals that people that are either starting out in the martial arts or maybe even coaching a little bit further on? What do you think some of those fundamentals are that maybe people sometimes overlook that you think are really important?
What I like to do, I have quite a few now high-level professional fighters who will come and search me out, who will
Yeah.
come and do practice with me and things like that. And I take a quick sort of snapshot of what I think, okay, what they're going to benefit from the
Mm.
most. And this is why I like to do, in particular, I like to isolate a lot of things.
Okay.
So I had a guy who'd been competing professionally Thai boxing for I think over 10 years. He searched me out. He'd been training in Thailand and this, that, and the other. And straight away I looked at him and thought, he's never been shown, and it's not so much about correct footwork. It was just my approach to footwork,
Yeah.
how to use footwork, feint, move, misdirect,
Yeah.
things like that. So I would then spend time with him just teaching him footwork. And then he'd come back to me and say, flipping it, what a game changer that
Mhm.
was. Instead of this traditional, he said, no one had ever shown me isolation drills on just footwork, having a method or a blueprint. So I started working on designing my own little sort of segments, right? This is a footwork sequence. This is a blueprint of how to train your footwork. Having worked with different boxing coaches,
Yeah.
over the years, some really good boxing coaches who were really good at sort of like, right, here's isolation drills for developing your footwork. And then adapting it so that it fit within our kind of criteria,
Sure.
And then boxing routines, pad work routines, things like that, and working with different people and isolating them and then stitching them together
Nice.
into like a mixed system, and I find that is a way that I do a lot of my coaching. Like I might do a night of, say if we're doing, like last night I'm doing a striking class, I isolated purely, so we're going to purely work on boxing and counter defense work, head movement, redirections, things like that. We're going to purely work on your boxing. Next session I might just purely work on their kicking, and then the next session I'll sort of stitch it all together and doing it in that way. The other day I was just teaching a specific routine about defense against punches.
Yeah.
So the whole full session was based around give and take drills, defending purely punches.
Yeah.
So do you know what I mean? So I like to isolate certain aspects and then stitch them together.
Great.
So that technical approach, like I said, and that's what I really enjoy doing.
Sure.
you know. And again, like say, searching out people. I remember my partner said to me, I think it was my birthday was coming up, and she sort of said to me, if you could choose to go and train with anyone, you know, who would it be? Who would you like to go and train with? And I said, do you know what? I said, I'd love to go and train with Ramen Deckers.
Yeah, yeah.
I said, I'd love to go and train with Ramen. I said, that would be something I'd really enjoy. I said, because, you know, and she said, right, okay. And she left it, didn't even bring it up again. And then it must have been just prior to my birthday, she got me a card and she said, right, we'll open that. And she'd been in talks with Core Hemmers and this, that, and the other, old Golden Glory. And then she'd got flight tickets, she'd booked the hotel, she booked all the training. And that was my birthday present.
She's a keeper. Jesus.
Yeah, yeah. So that's it. So for my birthday present was going training with Ramen for a week.
What was that experience like?
I mean, she'd done it, so she booked a private lesson with me every day.
Yeah, nice.
With him. So I was going training in the class. They did at Golden Glory at that time. At 12 o'clock every day was the professional fighters. Mm-hmm. So that was a hotbed, I mean, of all the big names.
I bet, yeah.
So I used to go and train at 12 o'clock. I can't remember what the session was, but we'd train with them for a while. And then I'd go and have a break, have a bite to eat, go back and do a private with Ramen in the afternoon. And then go back in the evening to train again. So I was training 2-3 times a day for a full week. And again, me and Ramen we just hit it off. Yeah. We just really hit it off. He was coming, picking us up from the hotel, taking us out for something to eat. We were pretty much spending the full day with him, and we just really hit it off. Amazing. And I was like, right, Ramen, I want you to come over to England. Yeah. I'm going to pay for you to come over, come and do some seminars at my academy, come and stay with us. So Ramen came and stayed at ours, you know, and again, just meeting him, it would just, again, that sort of thing of gaining a new friend. We stayed in touch, and then it wasn't long after that I'd heard he'd passed. And it was just like a real sort of like shock in that sense, you know what I mean? I was like, oh my god, because it was only prior to that he'd actually said to me, when he was at mine, he said to me, seeing how infused you are for training, he said, and keeping yourself in shape and looking after yourself, he said, it's kind of inspired me, Dave, to want to do it again myself. Right. He said, I know I've let myself go a little bit, I'm not training. He said, I'm obviously doing this, that, and the other. He said, but it's kind of motivated me to get myself back in shape. And I was like, oh, well, that's great, you know what I mean? So
nice to see you inspired Ramen Deckers, yeah.
Well, I don't know about that, but he was just like, he was saying to me, like, you know, the fact that I was so kind of enthusiastic about coaching, training, still wanting to learn, still this, that, and the other, keeping myself fit, diet, etc., etc. It was like, you know what? He said, I'm going to start getting myself back in shape. I'm going to start getting myself right, you know. So, but yeah, Ramen was, again, for me, that trip reinforced to me what I was teaching. Do you know what I mean? I was sparring with some of the really well-known guys and training with them, and you know, again, I was holding my own, you know. So that to me was okay. You know what I mean? You're there, you're at that level, you know what I mean? So, so over the years, that's been the thing for me, is working with the people at these levels, you know, inspires you, keeps you motivated, you know, that's, and like I say, that stays with me today on the basis that I just want to be the best coach I can be to the students who train at my academy. Sure. You know, purely and simply that. I want to see them develop, I want to see them grow. It's a very proud moment, isn't it, when your student makes it to black belt and you tie that belt around the waist. It's like, well done, son. Yeah. We got you there.
Yeah, you know I mean? It's a long old journey, and you know, and it doesn't end there either. But yeah.
No, it doesn't. No, yeah. And being proud of them, you know, like you look at them, and go, look at the standard, look how good they are. Yeah. You know, I don't in any way, shape, or form influence my students to compete. I don't. It's not something that you know, a lot of academies, it's purely aimed at competition, push them towards competition, influence them towards competition. It's not like that with mine. I don't do that at all. I just pretty much put it out there and say, if you want to compete, you let me know. Yeah. You know, if you want to compete, then I'll assist you and help you all the way. I don't think for any way that you certainly should not play at competition, regardless of the level. You don't play at fighting. So take it very serious, because no good comes from trauma to the body at all, regardless of what kind of fight it is. I've seen people get really badly hurt in like continuous semi-contact, but even points. I've seen people get hurt quite
Yeah, you
severely
still
in
got a
them.
busted nose or lose a tooth or yeah,
Yeah, and the rest, yeah, knockouts and all
yeah,
sorts of things, and at every competition level, there's that risk,
stuff can happen.
and
Yeah,
people go, oh yeah, it's a risk you take. Yeah, but let me tell you, as an experienced martial artist now, having done this a long time, it's not just the competitions, it's the hard spars, it's that overtraining,
the
um,
mental side of it, the diet, the training,
yeah,
getting your own
yeah,
out.
it has its toll on your body. There's a difference between training holistically, looking after yourself, and training to that elite level where you're pushing yourself to breaking
Yeah,
point. Some of my spars, my God, they used to be blooming, they were wars, some of them.
sure.
Um, I remember I got contacted by Lance
Hmm.
Lewis years ago. Lance was a legend in the UK kickboxing scene, a phenomenal fighter, brilliant. And Lance contacted me and said, I've got a world title fight coming up. I want you to help me get ready for it. And that to me was like, you what?
Whoa,
Yeah,
yeah,
100%. You know what I mean? I can't believe it. Lance Lewis asking me to help him out. And I'd seen Lance years and years and years before doing this charity thing, a demonstration thing, where he fought all these different black belts on the same night on the same show. He was sparring with them all, and my God, he just made them look nothing. He was so
another
slick.
level.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just so slick was Lance. You couldn't even hit him. You know what I mean? So, and then I've got Lance ringing me up saying, "I want you to help me get ready for these fights and for this fight." And I was like, "I'll be honoured."
yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I mean?
cool.
Of course, yeah. And for about a good few months, Lance was coming up to my gym a few times a week. We were sparring a lot of rounds over the period of a few months. We must have sparred, oh my God, a good few hundred
Yeah,
rounds
yeah.
of sparring. And I mean, sparring with Lance, I remember thinking to myself, flipping heck, the very first day I was like, you trying to kill me, you or what?
Mm,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
And, but as over the period of the weeks, I remember saying to him, I'm probably getting more out of it than you are, you know what I mean?
yeah,
In the sense of how it's developing me, my head movement, my agility, my boxing skill,
sure.
that brought me on no
Yeah,
end. So, that was an absolute honour for me. And again, me and Lance are still close. He'd come up and train with us. If he was ever up in the area, come and see me, and we'd go out for lunch. And he still sends me messages pretty much weekly,
fantastic.
So, to count these people that, like I said, I was massively inspired by them when I was a youngster,
Mm,
and now to count them as my
yeah,
friends,
yeah,
that means a lot to me. It really does.
yeah,
And they've been wonderful people. They're great. I think the world of them. So the martial arts, like I said, has been opened so many doors for me. So which I'm truly grateful for. I think you can go down so many different paths, can't you? So you know, getting involved with running my own academy and all that kind of stuff, and
yeah.
also the highs and lows of it, because I had an established academy. I'd moved to a brand new location. We'd invested a lot of my savings, me and my partner. We'd opened this new place, got it all going, and then lo and behold, bang, COVID kicks in.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, this new unit that I've moved to, that I've put all my money into, and we've done it all. I've borrowed money. I borrowed money from some friends. I got bank loans. I did all the place up, bought new mats, mirror, and everything. You know
yeah.
what I mean? And then all of a sudden, 13 weeks later, bang, we're pretty much shut.
Can't use it. Yeah,
And so I lost my savings, lost our money. We lost the academy. We just watched it just go boom. So highs and
yeah,
lows.
yeah.
But I still always remain that kind of same thing. I'm always optimistic that no matter how hard it is, endure it and you'll come out
It
stronger
will
at the
right
other end.
itself in the end.
Yeah, you'll come out of it. It doesn't last forever. As hard as it is and as horrible as it is, there's worse things that can happen. So, you know, suck it up. Learn from the experience, take it on the chin, and pick yourself up and carry on. So that's kind of my approach to it. No matter what, someone turns around and say, "Flipping it, you've had some bad luck, haven't you?" I say, "Yeah, yeah, but everybody, everybody's had it in some way, shape, or form." you know, and you know, don't feel sorry for yourself. You can have them times where you feel a bit thingy, can't you? But ultimately, like, well, okay, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, get over it, you know. And I think that's the beauty of it. When I was younger, I was training up through my grades. You know, there's always people in the gym who are higher level than you, more experienced than you, and they humble you. And as your skill develops and you move up and up and up and up and up, you know what I mean? It's that thing of you constant and never-ending improvement, just keep developing.
Yeah.
But I remember I asked many years ago to write an article for one of the magazines. I remember put the article I named the article. I was like, without struggle, there's no progress.
Yeah.
You know, I remember actually calling the article that because I thought, you know, you have to kind of struggle to gain your experience from it. You can do it then with true experience, true, you know, a true knowledge of what it's like to struggle. And I remember saying that the so-called people who you would say, well, they're talented, they find it easy. Well, usually them were the ones who were the first to kind of quit.
Yeah.
Because they found it easy.
Yeah.
And the second they found it challenging, they were the first to throw the towel in. You know, because at some point or other, there's going to be something in this industry, in the martial arts, whether it's a competition or so it's technical something you're going to find a challenge. Yeah. And if you find it challenging and you've not developed that backbone, because if you find it challenging from the day dot, and it's been challenging all the way up, well, it's always going to be challenging. Sure. So it's nothing new to you. You're not going to throw the towel in because you find it challenging.
Used to it.
If anything, you're gonna use that as inspiration to get better at it.
Absolutely.
Whereas if someone finds something easy, the second they find it hard, they throw the towel in.
Yeah.
So it's the same with relationships, isn't it? The people are getting relationships, they find the relationship a little bit challenging, and the next minute they're throwing the towel in.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's not how it should be. You're gonna find certain aspects of it challenging. So, you know what? Work around it.
Yeah. Develop, grow.
Yeah, grow through it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, you know, that's always and remains, I suppose, who I am with this. So, you know.
Quite a journey. We've got a new little segment for the podcast, and you're the first one to do it. And it's going to be 5 quick fire questions, if that's all right with you. And this is how we're going to end it off. So, number 1, a martial artist that you would love to spar, dead or alive?
Oh my God.
Your number 1 pick for it.
Who I'd love to spar.
Yeah. Or train with.
Spar or train with. I'm going to say spar anymore. I don't want to spar anymore. I've had too many hard spars. Do you know, there's been so many people I've trained over the years that have been, incredible martial artists. I wouldn't say there's any one particular one who stands out now. I mean, like, that's why, like, I used to have this thing that I would invite only the best guys I could invite down to my academy to teach. Rick Young came down, and Rick was an incredible martial artist.
I love Rick.
Yeah, brilliant martial artist, a very inspiring person.
Lovely guy as well.
Yeah, and then I led on to, like I say, I would only ever invite, the best guys down to my academy. Aston Sken down, Alfie was down. I used to invite all these guys down, so. Right now, I don't mean this. There's not a particular one that I would turn around and say, that's someone who I want to train with. I couldn't particularly pick somebody out because if I started looking at it, there would be quite a lot of people who I would like to go and train with, you know.
Fair enough.
Inspired me, yeah.
So you've trained with some of the best, so yeah. Favourite martial arts movie and why?
When I was younger, I was mad on them all. You know what I mean? I used to love the Bruce Lee films. Even predating that, I used to love the Chuck Norris films and things like that. You know, back in them days. Over time went on, but I would say I still, even now, the classics for like the Bruce Lee things like Enter the Dragon were still some of my favourite martial arts.
Yeah, cool.
Some of that. Some of the modern ones were good, but I still think Bruce had that charisma and whatnot. So agreed. I used to love watching his films back in the day. As I've got older, I'm not really one for the martial arts movies nowadays. I don't really think there's been any classics like that have
really
inspired me the same way that they did.
Yeah.
So,
fair. Your favourite martial arts technique or concept?
I don't have a particular favourite technique. What I do, I always look at it from the perspective of what weapon suits the range you're in. Mm-hmm. You know, this is why I think to be as complete as you can, be as good as an
Learn
all-rounder
it
as you
all.
can.
Yeah, kick a bit, punch a bit,
Yeah,
grapple a bit. Yeah,
yeah, be decent to a decent standard at each
yeah,
level. So, I know, for example, like I don't isolate purely working on grappling or purely on kicking or purely on boxing. You could say, well, a boxer's got better hands because he just isolates his boxing. A Thai boxer's going to be better at Thai boxing. I like to amalgamate
yeah,
and mix it that way so that if you come across a better
yeah,
striker, be able to out grapple him.
yeah. Sure.
If you come across a really good
Yeah,
grappler, be
I'll
able to
strike him.
outstrike
Yeah,
him. So I look at it from that kind of perspective that you will come across someone who's a better striker
it's
than
a
you.
good concept.
In
That's
which,
one that I go for. Yeah, yeah,
if you do that, you come across a guy who's really having your number with striking, be able to take him down, be able to throw him, be able to control
yeah,
him, be able to submit him. If you've got a guy who's really good with his takedowns, etc., be really good at your defence,
yeah,
be able to outstrike him, and so on.
yeah,
So I look at it from that kind of perspective that be able to adapt.
yeah. Perfect.
Have an option where, and that way you, like I said before, you'll have your favourite sort of things. Back in the early days, I used to love to kick.
Yeah,
All right, kicking was the thing I used to love doing. And then I worked with some guys, like I say, Lance and people like that, and I thought, flipping heck,
mm,
he can well outbox. He gets inside, he closes the range on me. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get better at my
sure.
infighting. I'm going to get better at that. So that was my next thing.
Yeah,
I thought, right, I'm going to work with these guys who can really help me with my boxing skills. So I searched out some boxing coaches, worked purely on my boxing for a
nice.
while, worked a lot of infighting. I had a guy who was I got very close to, a chap called Dave Barry. Dave Barry worked some of the toughest doors in Manchester and was a real. Dave was everything had to be effective
Yeah,
based, had to be street based. He was purely about that. Even like I said, headbutts, gougings, groin strikes, the
it's all
lot.
there. Yeah,
So me and Dave became very close, very, very close. So much he came and lived with me for a good few
hmm,
years. He basically had one of my spare
hmm,
rooms, and so me and Dave trained every week. On a Monday morning, we used to call it the Monday morning, and it just started with me and
sure.
Dave. And what Dave wanted to do was purely do pressure
Yeah,
testing
yeah.
work. Everything with Dave was right. It's Shark Tank,
It's gonna
anything
work.
goes, headbutts, groin kicks, the
Let's
lot.
go.
And so I started doing that, and then we started to invite. Did it a bit of an open house, so a lot of doormen used to come and train with us. Military guys used to come and train with us, and they didn't want any fluff. It had to be street real for
Yeah,
them.
super.
Right down the thingy, like I say, multiple attacker scenarios, all that kind of thing. So every Monday for over 3 years, we used to do this shark tanking and pressure testing, and it was full on, no holds barred, So um, from my perspective of striking with the grappling, it just keyed in with, you find out very quickly what's effective, what isn't.
Yeah,
The ranges, control the range in order to defend the headbutts in the clinch, etc., and so on. Strikes through your groin and all that kind of thing. Multiple attackers, using your opponent as a
shielding.
shield
Yeah,
and kind of stuff. So there were no egos. It was getting there, and your grades didn't matter. It
yeah,
was
yeah.
getting
Just
there,
learn. Yeah,
find out what works. A very humbling experience for a lot of people.
perfect.
We had a guy once who was, I think, at one point Oscar De La Hoya's main sparring partner.
Wow.
He came. He was on vacation. He came and did it. And afterwards, I remember him saying to me, he said, "Flipping heck." He went, "That is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life." He went, "That was insane." He said, "That was, he said, what an eye opener that was."
Sure.
And I said, "Well, that's what this is about." He says, you know, "Boxing, as much as I love it, is a part of fighting.
One
It's
aspect.
a
Yeah,
part of
yeah,
it. The second you start opening it up and you start having throws, headbutts, kicks, groins, strikes, everything, strikes on the floor, kicks on the floor,
yeah,
soccer
yeah.
kicks, it all changes the dynamics. So, that's, I think that's for me where, like I say, I have that ability to adapt.
Perfect.
So, yeah, that's, again, like I said, having them people around me. Dave was a real tough nut who, it had to be street real. It had to work, it had to be effective. So no particular one technique.
Fair.
Be able to adapt and be as good as you can be at it all,
Yeah, yeah.
really, which keeps you training, doesn't it? It
Exactly.
keeps you
Which
training
is what
because
it's
there's
all
so
about.
much you can practice. Yeah, there's so much you can learn.
David, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you. That was so interesting, and what a life in the martial arts, and yeah, what a level of experience. So thank you for sharing it with everyone. I really appreciate
It's
it,
been a nice
and
pleasure.
hopefully we'll cross paths at some point physically. That'd be really cool. And
Yeah, I do hope so. Yeah.
yeah, perfect. David, thank you.
Oh, honestly, my pleasure. And again, thanks for your
No,
time.
of course.
And
Thank you.
look forward to seeing you
Yeah.
again.
All right. Cheers, David. Thank you.